Hello, congregation, and welcome back to the Unveiled Podcast. Today, I have Beckie Stratemann with me. She's a speech pathologist, and she's going to enlighten us on all things speech-related. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Unveiled Podcast. So I want to start with, for those who don't know, what is speech language pathology?
So speech language pathology is the career, I guess it encompasses children and adults, and it's a lifespan. It is broad. It is a broad area, starting with children, infants with feeding.
Yeah.
And swallowing, all the way up to geriatric feeding and swallowing. And then you have cognitive issues, you have language development, you have articulation, voice issues. So speech language pathology encompasses all of those.
That's a lot.
All of those.
Yeah, so how did you get started in speech pathology?
So I went back to school after I had all three of my kiddos. The boys were 1, and I think I decided to go to school. And at first I was going to be a music education major.
Really? I did not know that.
I started out with music ed, realizing you needed so many outside of class credits that counted for 1 credit and it was just too much.
Yes.
So I realized in the first month or so, this was at Texas State, I realized in the first month or so that I could not keep that up. So
it's dare I say ridiculous. I was a music
yes, and 100%. Yes.
I started as a music ed major when I was down in Kingsville with a double in performance. And by the time I got to Texas State when I was a junior, I had just gone to performance.
Yes.
And performance is a lot because you
100%.
take here's a class for 1 credit. Here's 1 rehearsal. It's 1 credit. You may be in that rehearsal for 2.5 hours. But we're only going to count it as a 1-hour credit.
Yes, and then you go to all these concerts and other recitals and different things you have to go do.
And then you have to add on for you the music ed classes. So you're having to take a strings class, a low brass class.
Yes.
It's just crazy. I cannot imagine doing that with kids.
I was like, oh my gosh. So I finished out that semester. I was in the choirs there. I was in all the things. And I was like, okay, we're going to do music. Then I'm going to go elementary ed.
Okay.
So I decided to switch to elementary ed. And then I was like, I really don't know if the classroom setting is where I want to be. And so I took an intro to communication disorders and communication science, which is what you do to lead up to a speech language pathology degree. I loved it. I loved the courses. I loved the interaction, the different things. The professor was a stuttering major. He was a stuttering professor of stuttering.
I didn't know you could get so specific.
Yes. He had that as a child. He stuttered. So he went on, and he was just one of the main professors there at the time.
Wow.
And he did intro classes, and I just fell in love with it. He had us do a little voice, computerized voice program to watch your voice, and he had me I sang for the class, just to practice on the program. So it was really just fascinating. And I was like, so I took that, and then I was like, I love this. And so if I'm going to be in school, I'd already taken a couple of semesters of the music education or the elementary education. So I had that under my belt, and I was at the deciding point. I needed to decide which way I was going to go. And I decided to pursue communication science and communication disorders. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to go this far, I might as well get the master's with it, because you need that to be a fully licensed SLP.
Right.
So I went that direction. I finished my undergrad at Texas State, and then I went on to Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio to get my master's, which I loved the experience at both campuses. Just the input from all the professors and different things. So I realized quickly that speech language pathology was not just school-based.
Right.
That's what everyone thinks when they think of speech therapy. That they know, that's how they know of it mostly, if they know at all. And they know that students at school that they've been in contact with. Kids have needed it and all that. I quickly learned that it involves just so much more, so much more. You can go and just do adults in the nursing home setting or in an elder rehab setting. You can do infants in the NICU.
Wow, and even that, like young.
Yes, brand new babies. I mean, babies that are premature, and it has to do with their oral motor skills and their ability to eat.
Right.
Of course, it has nothing to do with speech at that age, but it does have to do with, are they progressing the pre-language skills and those pre-feeding skills. So there is so much involved.
That is so amazing to think about, because you hear speech pathology and you immediately think about, as I have a problem with mine, speaking.
No, I gotcha.
But I can remember, actually, now that you say that, when we had Allie, our foster daughter, you, before she was moved on to a different setting, that you had said, oh yes, she's going to need a feeding therapist. And I had asked, well, can I use somebody that I know from church?
Where does that come from?
Yes. And I mean, she was 3 weeks old, maybe. And so, wow, that's just crazy that you can think about, it doesn't just include speech.
Right.
And so do you work with children, though? So
I do. I've always worked with children. So once I graduated, well, actually it was my last semester in grad school, and we do internships. So we have to do a school-based setting, a medical-based setting. My medical base was at a nursing home. My school base was here in New Braunfels at an elementary school. Some people do hospital settings. It just depends on where they can find you internships. But that last semester is when I realized you could do babies and stuff. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. But then I went to, Texas Speech Hearing Language Association it's called TISHA.
Okay.
It's our organization here in Texas. There's conferences every year. I went to a conference in Dallas, and going around to all the booths and stuff, I found a booth that had a couple of people. I recognized them from church. They had just opened a company about 3 or 4 years earlier of a home health company here in New Braunfels, Himmel Home Health. I was so excited to see them, and I had no idea. I had their kids in my Sunday school class. Had no idea they had a company that I was leading, that's where I ended up working for 13 years. Yes. So we talked at that conference. I had an interview when I got back. I had a job lined up after I graduated.
Oh my gosh.
So it was fabulous. And
talk about God's hand and
everything. Yes. And it was amazing. And they were they were just growing by leaps and bounds. This was in 2010 when I graduated. About 2-3 years ago, I guess 3 years ago, they had reached their limit of growth, and they decided to sell, and they sold to Therapy 2000, which I worked for a couple more years. But at the time at Himmel, sorry, I keep going back and forth. But at Himmel is where I got into feeding. It took in 2012 or so, I was off and running with feeding stuff, and I loved that. Now, we still did birth to 21 is what pediatric therapy covers.
Interesting.
So it goes up to 21 years of age. And so we could just kind of go off, and you can focus. However, you still see everybody, but you could kind of focus if you wanted to do alternative augmentative communication devices and stuff. If you wanted to go autism route, if you wanted to go the feeding route, they supported you, and there were always people you could see in all those areas.
How nice.
So how cool. They helped. It was nice. It was really nice to get to trial and see where your passion was.
Right, exactly.
And I very much loved feeding. Love feeding.
Can you do feeding more than just babies? When kids have the ability to speak, can you still do, are there still feeding things that have to be addressed?
There are. It depends on the kiddo. Kiddos with autism may have texture issues.
Oh,
so sensory issues. So they may have a very limited diet. So you have to figure out what there's a feeding hierarchy. There's where you start with what they like, and you add in things slowly. And I never want to force feed a kiddo. I never want to get in their space.
Right.
But it's just through play. You work on how to touch the food, and first of all, you got to even smell the food, see the food in your environment, smell it, touch it, and then you get to where maybe taste it.
That's
so
awesome.
that you can build
There's so many different steps to it.
Yes.
Wow, you really back it all the way up to where it's going from, instead of just straight into the uncomfortable, you back it up and slowly get there. How neat.
Yes, 100%. And it kind of goes back to where, like, you think about how infants start feeding and start eating.
Yeah.
You don't just, when they come out, you shove a spoon of something in their mouth.
Yeah.
They've got to grow their muscles and their coordination and all the things in their oral mechanism, and then they explore with their hands a lot. They get messy. They feel it all over.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a great part. That's an important part of learning to eat and being okay with going to the next step, the crunchy or the messy, the sticky, there's just a lot of things that kids can be thrown off with, but by experiencing it. And so some of these older kids, you have to take back to that and work their way back up to where they're comfortable. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. I'm learning something.
I love
like
food.
With every single interview that I do, I learn something new, and I love that. That's awesome.
That is neat.
So it's very obvious that you love feeding, but I know that that's something a little bit, it's different than what you're doing right now. So what are you doing now?
So in February, I had the opportunity to work in the schools. It's closer to where we live. I was just up for a change. So I am working at the school system in Lavernia, and I am doing actually totally opposite from what I've done for the last 13 years, working with grades 6 through 12.
Really?
Hands-on therapy is what I'll be doing. I did it a few months in the spring. I will be starting here gung-ho full-time in the fall. In a couple weeks, because Lavernia starts a little earlier. But I am excited because it's a different demographic than I've done before. These kiddos, they'll remember me down the road. I feel like I need to be their cheerleader. I need to be all the things that I am for the little ones, but even more so, I don't know, it's just a different connection. So I'm excited about that. I do still have that love of feeding deep down, so we'll see where that leads us down the road. But for right now, I'm really excited about working with these older kiddos all the way to, like, again, 21 years old is when they age out of the extended high school programs, like kiddos with Down syndrome or other syndromes, just high needs.
Yeah. So what does that look like? I was thinking that I knew you were working in the schools, but for some reason I was thinking elementary school, but you're working with 6th through 12th grade.
Right, 6th through 12.
So how does that look different?
Yeah, it's, that's a great question. It is very, very different just from what I've been doing. So I have a speech language assistant, pathology assistant, that I am going to be supervising. She is working the younger kiddos, and then we're going to overlap in the intermediate kiddos, so 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Okay.
And I'm going to still be over them as far as doing their evals. She's going to do their therapy.
Gotcha.
Then I'm doing evals, therapy, all of it with the older kids, 6 through 12. So that's where I'm 6 through 12. So it looks different because, these guys aren't totally excited about me bringing in Legos. Some of them are. They just need a whole different approach.
Yeah.
So I will be, it's more of a, hey, I know what you're going through. We're here. I'm on your side.
Right.
I'm here to work with you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. I know a lot of this age, there's a lot of eye rolling. There's a lot of, why am I here? There's a lot of, I've been in speech forever. Yeah. I don't want to continue this. So it's a lot of just becoming co-workers, kind of, just working together to get to their end goal of whatever their issue is. Some of these kiddos have stuttering as their speech deficit. Some of them do still need to work on language. Some of them need to work on, a few still work on articulation.
Okay.
A lot of them are completed with articulation, and they complete speech therapy. They don't need it anymore after like 5th grade, 6th grade.
Gotcha.
Then we really tried to see, okay, by 8th grade, are we good? But there's some that need social skills all the way through, which, like I said, the Down syndrome population may still need to work with that a little bit. Kiddos, high need kiddos with students that have like a device that they work with. So we will continue to get that device incorporated into their everyday school life, their home life. There's just a lot of back and forth of working together with the family at home. So yeah, there's just, you name it, there's a lot to work on.
It's amazing that there's something to work on from birth all the way up to geriatric.
Right.
I have a friend who is an SLP and she works in a nursing home setting, and so she does a lot of, I think, like feeding. Is it usually?
Yes, it comes back around to feeding. Yes, it does.
Like if they've had a stroke. And
yes. So if they've had, it just depends on why they're there. It could be straight dementia. There's Alzheimer's, which is a little more in-depth dementia. They kind of just start forgetting how to do some things. There's such a high range of possibilities of why they might need a speech therapist. But they usually get evaluated when they go into a nursing home by all the therapies, OT, PT, speech, and just to kind of see where they're at. Do they need some strengthening in their overall muscles? Do they need feeding support? Some of the swallowing, they might need to be a little thickened on some of their things. But you have to also think you're not taking all the pleasure out of eating, because eating is such a thing. It's a community thing. It's something that you definitely do as a pleasure. Right. You do it to communicate or just to feel a sense of community.
Yeah.
So you don't want to make eating, socializing. You don't want to make eating so negative for them either. Right. Like where you're thickening everything and it becomes yuck for them. They just can't get past the thickener. But you want it to be safe for them. So you got to find that balance of safety and enjoyment. So I did an internship at a nursing home, and it was quite a bit of feeding where you're just talking about taking your time and, small sips and bites and alternating bites and sips.
Right. And
so you just don't get caught up with it. But that was my first experience with feeding, was just seeing that with the elderly population. So, but it kind of carries over. It just, because the mechanisms are the same. The kiddos are just, they're made a little different. It's just smaller. And you've got to take account for how, and they start to grow as they get bigger. And then the adults, how they are kind of losing some of the strength and things. So the nursing home, that's a whole nother population that I love too. I think I could really enjoy working there as well, but I have to focus. So.
I think you love people.
Yes, I think I do. And I think it's helping in general. And part of the going back to pediatrics, part of them is working with the parents. I mean, a lot of the feeding is working with the parents and just getting them confident about where their child is and how they can support them with their feeding.
One of the things that Beckie said to me beforehand is she said, I'm going to treat you like I'm talking to a mom of one of my kids. And I'm like, good, that's exactly what I want. I want you to feel comfortable and have a conversation about it. So going back to that, are there things that, let's say, a brand new mom might look out for? Because I know, man, like being parts of moms groups on Facebook, blessing and a curse, people, blessing and a curse. But sometimes it's like, every other thing it's got to be a lip tie. It's got to be a tongue tie. Have you had this checked? Have you had and it's so overwhelming. So overwhelming. So is there anything, let's say you're talking to a brand new mom, first baby, and they're having problems with feeding.
Yeah.
Is there things that you can look out for, like red flag's not the right word, but are there things to look for when it comes to knowing, like, maybe I should seek some help?
Yeah. Well, so I like to always be in connection with the physician.
Okay.
Because they make all the decisions medically.
Right.
You know, we do the therapy side of it, but we want to make sure things are good medically. We want to make sure their reflux, because we can't treat that.
Both of my babies
we can tell them, hey, we see signs of it.
Yes.
We can, maybe signs of tongue tie, lip tie. We don't fix it, but we can help frenectomy, so pre-release exercises or whatever the person, and it's so varied. There is such a huge range of medical opinion on all of that. So I like to know what medical base, where they are.
Right.
If they've been to their doctor, anything found at the hospital before they were released, the doctor, the nursing staff, did they say, oh, I think there might be a tongue tie, there might be a lip tie.
Right.
Was any of that discussed? If there are problems with latching, breast or bottle, any feeding issues, there's a full exam we can do, oral exam of the baby. But we just need that medical backing. We need to know that this has been checked out. This is need to be looked in more. Maybe they've already said there may be some brand new babies can go home and they could have some reflux going on. Oh yeah. That maybe they're gonna wait and see a little bit, and then so we can keep track of that.
Right.
Keep that in the back of our minds that if a baby hurts right after they eat, then that kind of turns them off of wanting to continue to eat.
Yes.
It's not always a tongue tie, lip tie, or even reflux, but all of those factors, if something is hurting or not right, then that could be showing up in why they're not eating.
So that makes a lot of sense. When my son, he's almost 15 months now, and about this time last year, we were just finding out that he was like quote unquote failure to thrive. And going into the doctor's office and realizing that he hadn't gained enough weight and he had fallen off of the growth chart. Like, he was at the 50th, maybe even 60th percentile when he was born. He fell off, was negatives. And I remember sitting there going, what do I do? I thought I was doing everything right. He's sleeping through the night, doesn't want to wake up and eat. We're doing great. And then he's failure to thrive. Found out later on that he was having issues because he had an issue with dairy and soy and reflux. And so he didn't want to eat because eating to him signaled, he was in pain.
The pain.
So that makes a lot of sense. But let's turn the tables a little bit. And let's say you've got a parent of a child who is of the age that we say should be speaking. What are some things that they can look for if they think, maybe I should seek some help with this?
Yes. So when you have kiddos that are just starting to babble, even in their first year, towards their first birthday, they should be babbling and just aware. And at that time, you can even see, parents, if they become concerned, we can kind of give them some ideas of what to work on. A lot of reading, a lot of just talking to them. If they kind of make a sound, you take that as a word and grow it into, they pointed to something, cup, you want your cup, things like that. So there's little things you can do, but there's also sometimes when speech pathologist is needed, and you maybe just want an evaluation. So you can have an evaluation and it can tell you more specifically, are they on track? Are they a little behind? And you can just see if they qualify to need actual intervention. So it starts at birth. There are scales and things you can look at to see if they're just making eye contact, looking around, aware of their environment, cooing back at you, all the way up to they may do all that fine the first 3 years, and then at 3 they have some words, just not a lot of words.
Right.
And so, again, if the mom gut is very, very true, very real, and I tell moms and dads to go with their gut, the pediatrician may or may not do things where they say they catch up, they understand that you are feeling worried. They may not, which may be okay at the time if it continues visit after visit. And then there may be the opposite where the doctor feels like you may need to go get something checked, but you're like, I think they're doing okay. But the next visit, the doctor's like, I think you really do. So you meet halfway. I mean, there's so many scenarios of the typical developing and being just a little bit behind. There's such an age range of development for everything, for feeding, for eating, for walking, for potty training, all the things. There's such a huge range that you don't want to compare. Right. But then you want to be like within a range, So you want to do, though, if you are, as a parent, if you are feeling concerned about any of those things, reach out to the pediatrician, and then move on and get an evaluation. Right. And because it doesn't hurt. It does not hurt. It rules things out. And then you can be at ease, because when you're uptight, and as a parent or caregiver, when you're uptight, and then you can't focus on just being in the moment. Right. It's hard to just be in the moment of learning when you could have had a learning opportunity of some sort, like just talking about a butterfly, talking about, the pasta on your plate. I mean, just all the things to help growth. And
so how much of this do you think is personality coming into it? Like, if you've got a kiddo that's just a shy, quiet kid, do you think that comes into play at all?
100%. Yes. I do think it comes into play, which puts you in that range. It could be the range of, the outgoing kid is at this end, just tackling everything, where the shyer child is going to be more reserved and laid back, and maybe not laid back, still maybe tense and apprehensive, but they're going to, it's just different. Right. It's not necessarily a disorder, but it's a difference between the kiddos. So it's knowing your kid, also looking at the parent, at you and your spouse or the other close caregivers in the environment, and understanding that, oh, dad doesn't talk a lot. Yeah. Dad's just quiet. He can talk. Or he stuttered as a child. And there are familial things. Oh, really? That can be carried over, and some of it's nurture, some of it's nature. So you will have, a dad that's very quiet, and the son's just laid back and sits and watches everybody. That's what he sees. Yeah. The picky eating. Think about how you're eating, or what your relationship with food is. Right. And it's not always that simple. Right. 100%, not always that simple. But it just, look at the environment that they're in. Maybe grandpa comes in and he hates everything, and he eats only hamburgers. Right. It's just look at the big picture. Yes, look at the big picture. Our grandpa, grandma, they just don't talk. Right. They're very quiet and reserved. It kind of goes around the whole child on how they develop.
That makes a lot of sense. Labor and delivery nurse told me one time, anytime, even when they're babies, you should talk to them. Like, if you're taking them to change your diaper, we're going to change your diaper. Now we're going to change the laundry. Oh, let's turn the light off. Yeah. And she said, you don't have any idea how much of a difference that can make. Right. It's not something that, if you've ever thought about it, you think, okay, they're a baby, I'm just going to go change the laundry or change your diaper, and
we get it done, and we got to move on to the next thing because we're busy. Yes. Yes. Well, I also used to, before COVID, I would tell, go to the grocery store with your kiddos. Well, now you can again. I mean, you can go to the grocery store and do a trip where you're just perusing. You're not stressed about, when is that? I don't know. But you can go take your kiddos, or take your child, and just talk about the apples, and talk about, and let's look for red in the grocery store.
That's a good idea.
And run by, pick up your milk, but then go look things that are red, or things that are, pick a color of the day, and go outside and take a walk. And talk about, or a shape of the day. There's different things you can focus on. I have a resource I love that has a calendar, and it's for babies up to 3-ish, or any age, if developmentally appropriate, where it just has an activity of the day.
Oh, neat.
And like just seeing if you're happy and you know it.
Yeah.
Today. And that's your activity for that day. Go out and pick up leaves, go out and look at just what's happening outside.
Yeah.
Of course, do it early in the morning if it's 100-degree summers. Do it there's things. Look outside. Think outside the box. For activities, you don't have to spend money, and you don't have to go places.
Right.
You don't have to pay to go to the zoo or pay to go to the children's museum or whatever. Those are nice, and go to the library. Let them just kind of touch the books and play with the toys at the library. And it's hard. I understand. You get in your daily. We've got to do this, this, and this.
Right.
It's hard to stop, but make it simple on yourself too. I don't want it to be stressful, because when mom's stressed or dad's stressed, it definitely carries over.
Feel that.
Yeah, they feel it. So
that's such a good resource, because if you think about it, like even if it's a small thing, saying you're happy, go outside and pick up leaves. It's a way for you and your child to connect. Because as stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads or even part-time parents that are home part of the day, you can get in that routine, but also you can get to that point where you're like, I've done everything and it's only been 20 minutes.
Right.
What do I do next?
Yes.
These kids are at my legs wanting me to do all these things. Anyway, so it's nice to have a resource that says, hey, let's try this. You don't have to think about, that does the thinking for you.
Yes.
That's
you
really
put that
nice.
calendar up on your fridge and you just go, okay, today.
This is what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
Do you have a website where that
I do have a link I can give you.
We'll put that in the description of this video.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yes, and she's an SLP, and she does this. You sign up for her emails, and she'll send you a calendar for that month. So it's a monthly, every month calendar, and it's really neat. It's very I love it because it's simple. It's things you have. It's things you can, but it helps you not have to come up with it.
Something. Yes. That's a really great resource. Yeah. Becky, this has been such an awesome interview. We've learned a whole lot. Lots of different tips and tricks and resources. So thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, absolutely. We definitely know who to come to if we have speech questions in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching today. We will see you next week for our next part to the parenting series. Until then, see you later.